I'm a third generation pharmacist. My grandfather was a pharmacist, opened his own business in 1938. My father was a pharmacist. I have two uncles that still are running a family operated business here in the Gainesville area. And I graduated from UT Austin in 92 and basically started practicing in 93. I have been working in a pharmacy, though, because of the family-owned business since the early 80s. And, I mean, the change between what was going on in the 80s with kids and adults, too, but especially with children, is night and day. Because, you know, back then when prescriptions were going out the door for kids, it was antibiotics, it was cough syrups, it was, you know, and I mean, unless you had a really sick kid that had cancer or something, which was so rare, right?
Right.
You didn't see any of these ADHD drugs, ADD drugs. None of that was going on. And so then I go to pharmacy school, and as I'm going through pharmacy school, I'm just looking at learning how all these medicines work in the body and thinking to myself, is this really a good idea? You know, is this really a good idea to alter the body? Like the proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole and Nexium were big up and comers then. And we had Prozac and Zoloft was coming out. I mean, 92 was a great year to be graduating. We had, lisinopril, and those are the blood pressure, the prils and the ARBs that all work in the kidney and are quote unquote protect the kidney, you know, were coming out. And I'm just sitting there, and of course, I didn't voice my concerns to anybody, but I'm like, is it really a good idea to alter brain chemistry? I mean, what happens when you do this over a long period of time? Because I had enough common sense to know, like, our bodies are amazing and they function perfectly, and just altering something, it's got to cause problems down the road, you know?
You're right. Absolutely right. Our bodies are natural healers, right? If we allow them the space to be there, right?
Exactly. And I didn't really know anything about natural healing back then, but I just knew I didn't think drugs were a real good idea. I knew I never wanted to be on them.
Right, right.
You know? So anyway, I graduate and I start practicing, and I mostly have done retail pharmacy. And, you know, we're filling ADD meds, ADHD meds. And I mean, so this continues on. Let's see, at my last retail job, I quit in 2017. You know, they transitioned us into having to vaccinate people. I, from the get-go, have thought the flu vaccine was a complete scam. Part of what led to that for me was over the years working in retail, seeing how pharma operated and taking advantage of people's ignorance. In other words, you know, what pharma will do, some of the new drugs, they just reinvent the wheel. And then they get a new patent because the FDA allows them to do it. And then they go out and market this new drug, which is really an old drug reformulated, to the doctors. And then they show up with a prescription for this new drug, which was going to cost me our pharmacy, a lot of money to order, for one thing.
Right.
But then, you know, the patient's stuck with some astronomical copay, or their insurance doesn't cover it, and they give them these little coupon cards that never worked. I mean, it was like 1 out of 99 would come up $25. The rest, there was always some glitch, and then I'm having to explain it to an angry patient.
Oh.
And at the end of the day, it was like, well, you know, there's been a drug that's been out on the market for quite a while that's on my $4 list, or that your insurance will cover for $10. And if y'all just call your doctor, we can change it to that. And I think you're going to be fine. You might have to take it twice a day instead of once. And that was so much of my life as a pharmacist, because I took an oath to consider the welfare of humanity my primary concern. And that includes their pocketbook.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's where I saw pharma just being so dishonest. And, you know, it's the old thing, Lisa. It's like, if you meet me and I'm working for you or whatever, and you see I'm cheating on the time clock, right there, you're going to question my character, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and this happened to me over the course of the years. I had, you know, a technician, she's cheating on the time clock. She got caught. The company wouldn't let me fire her. Turned out later, she's stealing hydrocodone and oxy. She's stealing controls, Xanax. Well, you know, who she was showed up early on. We should have canned her way back. You know, we caught her stealing on the clock. That was who she really was. And that's how I felt with pharma. Who are they really? Well, they don't have the patients back. I can tell you that. So when I and I have to say, I have two adult children, ages 21 and 23. And in all of this, I did not vaccinate them, which was
Wow, good for you.
a fluke, though. I didn't trust pharma. This is in the mid 90s. I listened to a naturopathic doctor. He made so much more sense on like not dosing with ibuprofen and Tylenol, let the fever run. I mean, everything he said about nutrition made so much more sense than everything I'd learned in pharmacy school. And,
Right, exactly.
yeah, exactly. And autism's on the rise. And I'm like, that's say no more. So yeah, my kids are unvaxxed. I had the healthiest kids. I mean, I'm not saying they were never sick, but they both had chicken pox. They don't even remember it. They're like mad now with all this anti-vax thing. They're like, remember the chicken pox? I'm like, that's a tragedy.
That just built your immune system. You didn't even know.
Right? I mean, it was a weird summer because I had to take 2 weeks off to be home with kids that had chicken pox. But you know what? We were done. So they've always been healthy. They've never had allergies. They've just had like zero issues. My life was so easy as a mother.
Right, right.
End of my retail career, and when I just had started coming to the decision, I can't do this anymore. I can't be vaccinating these people. And I didn't know it was in vaccines. I hated the way the system was going. I don't know. It just transitioned to me starting to really learn about what was in the vaccines, the ingredients. And I'm like, oh my God, who knew? I didn't even know as a pharmacist where to look on a flippin' package insert to tell you what was in the dumb thing.
Did people ever ask you, Lori, like, what am I giving my child? Or what am I giving myself? I mean, did you ever?
Fortunately, I never had to do children. In Florida, it's 18 and up. The only questions I would get was things like, was it trivalent, meaning 3, antigens, or quadrivalent, meaning 4 strains?
4.
Stuff like that. They didn't know enough to ask either back then. I do know, like, one lady I did file a VAERS for. The flu shot I gave her almost killed her. And God, I felt so bad. And, I hated doing it. I felt in the core of my spirit that what I was doing was wrong, but I didn't point why. You know how that is?
Absolutely. I do.
Truth is coming out, and people are really, their eyes are being opened. It's a mind blower.
Yeah, I know. I feel it. My spirit tells me when I'm not supposed to do something, or when something's too dark or not right. It tells you. If you follow that and you honor that, I think it will allow you to do better by that, right? If you follow it. So, okay. So tell me. So you went on to, what was your last job with them?
My last job, which I started last November, was it's called medication therapy management. So it was really unique in that we're just on the phone with people all day, talking to patients, counseling on their drugs. And I didn't have to vaccinate. We didn't even have medications there. It was all counseling. So okay. I really loved it in the sense that I got to talk to the people. I got to know the people. A lot of them I would really bond with while I was on the phone. I just would stay away from the topic of vaccines because it's like if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And I was afraid if I said anything like, don't get the flu shot, or you might want to watch the flu shot, that I probably, because they monitor our calls. But,
right.
But there was a book that I was recommending to patients. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called How Not to Die.
No, I don't think I've heard of that one.
Oh my God. Have you ever seen the documentary, What the Health?
No, not that one either.
You gotta watch it, girl. You gotta watch it. It is
okay.
It's free. I'll send you the link. But anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a doctor. His name's Michael Greger, and he was actually interviewed in What the Health. There's several MDs interviewed, but he's one of them. And he breaks down in this book different disease states, like how not to die of lung disease, how not to die of heart disease, how not to die of diabetes. And he dedicates a chapter to each disease state. And the beautiful thing is he really explains the disease in layman's terms, which doctors rarely do. They just go, you got diabetes, you got high blood pressure. They don't explain like what's going on in the body, and then the foods you need to eat to reverse it, or improve or reverse.
Right.
Since I was working, when I worked for the company, for really the insurance companies are our clients, to me, it would be unethical for me not to help a patient improve or reverse disease if they're interested in going
Right.
down that road.
Right. Exactly.
Especially when you look at the pharmacist oath. And I literally got fired for doing that because they said, and it was on the cusp. I did send out a mass email to our whole office, which was like 180 people, pharmacists, interns. It was on the flu shot and critical thinking. Just, you need to think about what you're having injected. And they called me on the carpet about that. I got kind of quasi-written up, sort of a coaching session, which I knew I would, but I had so many interns under me, and I had grown to love them. I had like 20-something interns, and I just thought, I can't not tell these kids anything. I keep my mouth shut.
Right. And they were kids. Someone needed to tell them the truth, right?
Exactly. And I mean,
right.
you may all think I'm crazy, but I don't care, because you know how it is. Once that seed is planted.
Yes. I was going to say, you plant that seed. You don't know if 5 years, 10 years down the road, that person's going to remember that one thing that you told them, and they're going to go off on that, right? And they're going to do their own research, or they're going to become better informed, right?
That's the one thing that changed their life. You know?
Right. Made a difference, right? It could be the Rachel of the world, right? We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I sent the email out. So that put me on the radar big time. And I think then they started really monitoring my calls. And they'd hired this new manager who was a former CVSer, which that's, it's like say no more.
Right, exactly.
He just, that resource isn't client approved. And I was like, why wouldn't a client approve it? I mean, if I help a person get better, that's less claims to the insurance company. They're still paying their premiums, so that's more money for the insurance. I mean, how is this not a home run for everybody?
Right.
But
did you ever see, Lori, where they were the doctors or was anybody that getting compensated by? Because you're saying that you would recommend the $4 one, but they were pushing the $700 whatever one they couldn't afford. Did you see how that transpired at all?
You mean as far as the doctors perhaps getting,
or even the pharmacy pushing a specific one versus the $4 one?
It definitely wasn't pharmacy driven, because here's the thing: if somebody comes in with a new drug, quote unquote, that's really a reinvention of the wheel, we'll say, are you familiar with that? It's a diabetic. It's like common. Okay, so they've over the years reformulated metformin they'll add a different salt, and then they'll charge an astronomical amount of money for it. The pharmacy, it's on the pharmacy to order that. So suddenly I've got a ton of the regular metformin on the shelf that's $4 free, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now the pharmacy's got to fork out the $1,000 or whatever it's going to cost to get that
in stock. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and my pharmacy was always on my butt about inventory. So that was another reason I was really stringent, but not just for me, because so there was no kickback from the pharmacy. It was either the doctors were getting some kind of a,
incentive.
Yeah, exactly, to prescribe that, because I'd be like, really? You don't know that this drug's been out for 100 years? Why are you even prescribing this? And some of the old school prescribers were onto it.
Right.
Wouldn't fall for it. But like the newer ones out of school, it was invariably, for the most part, younger doctors.
Okay. Right. And that's all the training they knew. They hadn't been around long enough to know that the ingredients were too similar. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. All right.
Right. So, anyway, I don't know, I answered the question. That's
it.
All came to be. And then it's just been like, the more I dig, I mean, it's just amazing, and I had no idea what was going on with the vaccine schedule with kids being in retail pharmacy, servicing adults and children. And when I saw it, like, my mind was blown, because I didn't vaccinate my kids. I didn't even know. And then when you learn about the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act.
Right, exactly. When you really dig and you find out the truth, it's horrifying. So how did they actually, what did they say to you that said you no longer work here?
Oh, okay. So I got pulled into the office. This was just this past Friday. They had counseled me, they said 4 times. So they went over, on July 9th, we counseled you. This is such a weird interview back on the 9th of July. They brought me in. They said, there was something inappropriate that you said about vaccines. And I'm like, okay, what was it? Well, we don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? Well, this is what HR told us. So you need to stick to the whatever guidelines. And I'm like, how can I correct something? I don't even know what I said. And I knew they had the recording. I knew, but I really tried to stay off the topic of vaccines with people. I actually filed 2 VAERS while I was there. One woman almost died of a flu shot, not one I gave her, thank God. And another lady had been hospitalized for weeks, so sick after Shingrix. And it wasn't until weeks down the road, of course, her doctor couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, that she started reading the side effects, because a friend was like, have you looked at that? And she's like, holy crap, Lori, I didn't have just one, I had all of them. Anyway, so I filed VAERS on. Other than that, I really had hardly talked to anybody about vaccines. So I was like, but they couldn't tell me. So that was my first, apparently, that they counted as, ting. And then another one, I don't know, they were on me because I hadn't recommended a statin. A lady had come off her statin. She was having extreme muscle pain. It turned out to be another drug she was on. And then they were like, why didn't you recommend the statin? She still should be on the statin. And I'm like, why am I going to recommend something that causes the problem she's having? I mean,
right.
But it was so funny. Most pharmacists are just, you're right, I should have recommended this.
I'm sorry, you went real low on that volume.
Right. They're like, they just succumb because they want to keep their job.
Right.
Like, you're right, I should have recommended the statin. You're right, I should have done that. And me, I'm like, no. So that was the second thing I got. What was the third thing? Oh, I think it was my email that I sent out that I got coached on. And then they had this particular boss. He was monitoring my calls. I had a Wednesday call from this guy, older gentleman. I think he was like 67 years old, diabetes, high blood pressure. And he had, and I'll be honest with you, I think they staged this call. I think they set me up because the call went for like 45 minutes and I could not get this guy off the phone. I mean, he was super nice, but I'm like, why is this phone call going on and on and on? And before we hang up from anybody, we're supposed to say, do you have any further questions and concerns? Which if you got a real talker on the phone, that can be a bad thing. Because they'll
right. You don't want to invite another 45 minutes in, right?
But he kept having these little, and finally his last question for me, this is my third round of, do you have any further questions and concerns? Trying to reel it in. And we'd had a really good conversation. He was upset about diabetes and Crohn's. I did not recommend the book at that point. He was doing pretty well with his meds. His blood glucose was in range. His A1C was good. Everything was good. And he goes, yeah, I do have one more question. And I'm like, what's that, sir? He says, how do I get rid of this diabetes? And what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to sit there and go, you're stuck with it for life, bud? I mean, that's an out and out lie. And so I said, well, sir, it turns out they've found through studies that if you adhere to a plant-based diet, primarily a plant-based diet, you can improve and in some cases reverse your disease state. And he was like, a what? A what? And so I'm spelling it for him. And then he goes, well, how do I do that? How do I find out about that? I mean, he's literally leading me into this conversation looking back. So I fall for it. I'm like, well, there's a book I can recommend. And I start recommending the book. And we had a team chat, email thing at work. Immediately, my boss pipes up and goes, that book is not client approved. No.
So they were monitoring the call and monitoring everything you were saying and looking for a reason to fire you, it sounds like.
And I honestly believe the phone call was staged because what was weird to me at the time, the guy had like a really American name like John Miller or something. Right. He had this weird accent and it was an Indian accent. It wasn't real thick, but it wasn't Yankee because he was in Connecticut. I'm like, this is weird that this guy would have this accent. But Lori's I'm just going along with the program, doing my job.
Trying to help your people.
Trying to help poor little patients. And that was their final straw for me. I said, Mike, he just asked me how to get rid of diabetes. What am I supposed to do?
When I know that there's an alternative, right?
Do what?
Well, when you know there's an alternative, it's really difficult not to want to recommend that.
And what is even more weird about this whole thing, so back in May, our CEO, who's actually a very impressive guy, he's won like Entrepreneur of the Year. He started like 10 businesses. I'm in the process of learning more about this man. He had sent out an email. We had this thing called fundamentals every week. And the fundamental he had sent out was do the right thing always. And then he went on to talk about how he and his wife had come, and she's a pharmacist, he's a pharmacist, and got like a master's in divinity and then another degree. I think he's like a nurse practitioner. I mean, the guy is he's a PhD, so accomplished. And he and his wife had come to Florida for a conference. Some holistic somebody had spoke at this conference. He and his wife had transitioned to 100% plant-based diet. He'd already lost weight. His blood pressure was down. He'd reduced his meds. This is our CEO. And his cholesterol had come down. And he encouraged the entire company to watch the documentary, What the Health, and Forks Over Knives. Well, I'm in the hallelujah corner. I'm like,
is that the book for, I'm writing this down. Is that the book for diabetes, Forks Over Knives?
Forks Over Knives is plant-based. It's actually, you can go to forksovernknives.com. There's a documentary. I have not watched it yet because it's not free, but What the Health is free.
Okay. And then you said there was also a diabetes book. What was that?
It's called How Not to Die. Do you want me to show it to you?
Oh, okay. That's a diabetes book. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's everything book. It's How Not to Die. Heart disease, lung disease, high cholesterol.
Okay. I love that.
It's incredible.
Okay.
Where were we at? Oh, so the CEO sends this out, right? Mm-hmm. And is advocating the plant-based diet in the whole 9 yards. Well, at that point, this new manager hadn't been hired. So I'm like, man, I am really working for the right company, man. I, just knew with good conscience, I could offer up this, book that I offer up. And, and then this one manager gets hired and it starts riding my butt. And it's the one that fired me.
Oh.
So in the exit interview, I had 3 people in my exit interview, which that was kind of fun too. I'll tell you this, because here I am, 57 years old, in good shape, on 0 prescription drugs. The 2 people that are firing me are overweight. God only knows what else, but right. Definitely not a picture of health, calling me down. And I thought, what is wrong with this picture?
Right. Exactly. Wow.
But yeah, they just.
So this was really just this last Friday.
This was Friday, November the 1st. Friday morning.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Well, I'm sure you have other things to probably take on with, review that case of your own. It sounds like there's some other stuff going on there, but.
I'm emailing because I'm like, you really know what's going on in the Gainesville, Florida call center here with people that we're firing people that are recommending health alternatives for people.
That you have pushed us to get involved in, right? As a CEO. I mean, he was encouraging, at least, right? Encouraging you to get healthier.
Even not. What is health care? I mean, somebody tell me what that is.
Sick care.
Health care. Are we designed to just be robots that are going, what's your fasting blood glucose? What's your A1C? What's your blood pressure? Okay, nice talking to you, Ms. Smith. Have a great day. I mean, hello? Yeah,
well, all the shows we have done on vaccines and, it's just one more way to keep us sick, keep us sick, unhealthy, fat, addicted to the drugs until we die of cancer, and then they can ring up a bunch of bills on cancer, and then we die, or we die. We're not certainly living at all, really, when you think about it, right?
We're surviving.
Yes, barely, right? And people are having a hard time paying for meds and food, and so they're so medicated and so drugged, and God forbid they all get cancer, and then they need, chemo, and the doctors get to charge them an astronomical amount of money to do that. So what Tank and I Tank is working on, one of the projects, is really our true desire is to create true healthcare that actually cares about your health. And really, if we could make the system where doctors are compensated on how healthy their patients are versus how sick they are, is really our ultimate goal, right? Yeah. And if we could get President Trump to make that the federal system, that is our ultimate goal, is to adopt that idea and to compensate doctors based on how healthy, not how sick we are. And I just think it would change everything. right?
Yes, it
They
would.
wouldn't be recommending vaccines, and they would put us on more plant-based food and get the fluoride out of the water, and get rid of GMOs and non-organic foods, and anything that's causing us harm, right? The
Yeah,
processed foods and the things that really truly keep us sick and addicted, and our children, our children have never been fatter, sicker, addicted, themselves to meds and different things. So that's really our goal, Lori, is to kind of
yes,
take it
I would love
to
to
that level.
that because that's what it's got to be. And I would sit there and hear people going, "Gosh, I just can't believe the copay on my insulin. My Lantus is so this and that." I'm like, if I could teach you how to maybe reverse your disease, would you be interested in that?
I love that.
Yeah, and then you go down that road. And now that I just got fired for going down that road, and I mean, it's insanity. It's complete insanity.
Well, Lori, we are looking literally, like I said, Tank will be in charge of bringing funds into the people, like really bring it to the people that want to make a difference. And it sounds like you're one of us,
Yes.
and you can get really involved. And hopefully your next job will be working with us to make the world better and more informed. And so we're happy to have you in that realm.
I would
Timing is
love.
perfect. Maybe you're just meant to be here.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you one more question. You mentioned the word VAERS. And so for our listeners that are going to be listening to this, what does VAERS mean? So you can explain it to them.
That is the vaccine adverse event reporting system. That is the
Okay.
only tracking system we have for any kind of vaccine injury. And there was a Harvard study done. It's been a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if you're aware, where they did actually an excellent study, and only about 1%, 1 to 10% of vaccine injuries are ever even reported.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's an interesting number, 1%.
Yeah, well, they said 1 to 10, but it was closer to one. Harvard had a system in place for the CDC. They did the study. They were given, like, I think it was $1 million to do the study by the CDC. They came up with how they could improve, ways to implement and improve the system. The CDC dropped them like a hot potato. They never heard back. It's an interesting story, but the
Yeah.
point is, like most healthcare providers, they don't even know what VAERS is. They're like, the what? And I only knew because when I got certified to immunize, my employer was thorough in teaching us about the VAERS system, which now I'm really grateful for. But a lot of doctors, nurses, they don't even know, and they don't even know what vaccine injury is. They don't know what to look for.
Right. I'm glad. I think that that's something that we need to do more shows on, is how to be aware. What are the symptoms? What's going to show up? What does it look like? So I'm glad that you said that. And I was not aware of that study.